You ever stand in a room full of people who used to respect you and feel the air shift when they stop? That's what it felt like that morning. The hum of computers, the stale coffee smell, dozens of eyes flicking up from screens when my boss, Martin Graves, threw the project binder across the table and said, loud enough for the interns to hear, "Let's see how you fix this, genius." The word genius hit harder than any curse could, because a week ago, that's what he called me in front of investors. The brightest mind in the department, the future of the company. Now he used it like a knife. The binder hit the floor, pages scattering like confetti from a funeral. The graphs were red, the timelines bleeding. My chest felt tight, but I kept my expression steady. You don't show weakness around Martin. He feeds on it. He smirked, hands in his pockets, that smug calm of a man who's already chosen his scapegoat. You wanted to lead the project, Ethan. You said you were ready. Now you can clean up your own mess, alone. Laughter, small, nervous from the corner. The kind of laughter that tells you everyone's afraid, but relieved it isn't them. I didn't say a word. Not when he slammed the door. Not when the others looked away like I'd turned invisible. I just stared at the flickering light above the conference table until the hum of the projector drowned out the sound of my heartbeat. I stayed after everyone left. The office felt colder after sunset, the kind of sterile quiet only open floors have. Monitors still glowed faint blue. The failed project dashboard blinked with red errors like a heartbeat monitor flatlining. I'd been up for 3 nights straight before that meeting, fixing what Martin broke. Because here's what no one knew. He was the one who changed the deadlines, forced us to go live before testing was finished, then disappeared for a golf trip with investors. Now it was my name on the report. E. Cole, technical lead. Project failure. I stared at it until the words blurred. My fingers trembled. Then something inside me, the part that still believed in fairness, just went quiet. He thought humiliation would break me. It didn't. It burned everything that used to hold me back. Around midnight, I unlocked my workstation again. The office security cameras were motion-triggered, looping footage every 4 hours. I knew because I built that system. I built all of it. The servers, the internal network, the automation scripts that handled everything from payroll to access control. Martin loved saying the company ran like a machine. He never realized I was the one who built the engine. I started checking logs, not to fix the project, but to understand where he'd buried the truth. And buried it he had. Fake reports, doctored timestamps, emails that made it look like I'd missed deadlines he'd moved. He'd been preparing my fall for months, maybe years. Every click of the mouse was another piece of his lie unfolding, and the more I saw, the calmer I became. There's a point when anger stops being heat and turns into focus, the kind that sharpens your breathing and slows your pulse. At 2:43 a.m., I opened the master admin panel. Martin's account was locked out after hours. Mine wasn't. I could see everything, the servers, the pipelines, the hidden backup drives, and buried deep inside, something I'd forgotten existed. Ghost Mirror, it's a script I wrote years ago during a long weekend, back when I was testing redundancy systems. It was designed to mirror data across shadow servers in real time, invisible to everyone except the root admin. Back then it was just a failsafe. Now it was an opportunity. I sat there watching the screen glow in the dark office, the hum of the server fans filling the silence. Outside, the city lights blinked like a heartbeat. Martin wanted me to fix his mess. Fine. I'd fix it in a way he'd never see coming. The first step wasn't sabotage. It was surveillance. If he wanted to destroy my reputation, I'd let him keep talking. Keep sending his smug little emails. Keep forging reports. And I'd record every bit of it. Because sometimes the smartest move isn't fighting back. It's letting your enemy hang himself with his own rope while you hold the other end. By dawn, I had what I needed, an untraceable mirror of the entire system, copied and sealed. His voice echoed in my mind one more time. Let's see how you fix this, genius. For the first time since that meeting, I smiled. Not the bitter kind, the quiet kind that comes when you stop hoping for fairness and start writing your own. When the first employees came in, I was still at my desk, tie loosened, coffee cold. One of the interns stopped by and asked if I'd been there all night. I said yes. He gave me a look, half pity, half awe. If only he knew. By 8 a.m., I'd hidden the mirrored archive behind an innocuous label, Q3 server optimization, and walked past Martin's office without looking in. He was laughing on the phone, probably explaining to someone how he handled the crisis. He didn't even notice me. That was fine, because from that moment on, Martin Graves's empire wasn't his anymore. It was mine. He just didn't know it yet. When people talk about revenge, they picture anger, slammed doors, raised voices, something loud enough to prove you were hurt. But real revenge doesn't sound like that. It sounds like typing. Quiet, consistent, relentless. That's how my nights looked after that meeting. Days blurred into each other, but I stayed late every evening, pretending to fix the failed project. Nobody questioned it. In their eyes, I was the desperate guy trying to save his job. In reality, I was saving the evidence of a crime. Martin had made a mistake that only someone like me could notice. The audit logs didn't just record who made changes. They recorded where the commands came from. His laptop had been used to approve fraudulent contracts sent to shell accounts in Singapore and Oslo. Money trails leading nowhere but his pockets. He'd been siphoning off the company for months, and when the project started failing, he needed a fall guy to cover the trail. That fall guy was me. The funny part, he could have gotten away with it if he hadn't tried to humiliate me. Pride, I've learned, kills quietly. Every night, I sat in that empty office, bathed in the glow of monitors, tracing every file, every backup, every transfer. The ghost mirror system I reactivated copied everything. Documents, emails, chat logs, even deleted drafts. It was like holding a mirror to a man's soul. And Martin's soul was rotten. He wasn't just stealing. He was manipulating the board, feeding false performance reports to inflate his own bonuses, even blackmailing a junior engineer over leaked test data. He'd built a kingdom on intimidation, and now I had the blueprints, but I didn't want to destroy him yet. Not immediately. That's the thing about revenge. Timing decides everything. Too early and it looks like anger. Too late and you become the villain. So I watched, I collected, I waited. By the third week, I had a digital copy of every lie he'd ever told. Meanwhile, in daylight, I kept my act perfect. I'd nod during meetings, take notes I didn't need, even thanked Martin for trusting me with the fix. He smiled back, that snake smile, all teeth and ego. He didn't notice the shift. He never does. One Thursday evening, he dropped by my cubicle, coffee in hand, pretending to check in. "How's our little miracle worker doing? Making progress?" He said, and as if we were still a team. I looked up, forcing a polite smile. "Almost done. Might need to run one more overnight test." He leaned on my desk, lowering his voice like we were sharing a secret. "Just make sure it's presentable. Investors want results, not excuses. And Ethan," he paused, tapping the edge of my monitor, "try not to screw it up this time." Then he walked off, whistling. That whistle, that casual, tuneless arrogance, stuck in my head for hours after he left. When the office finally went dark, I logged into the mirrored server and opened a new file. Final phase. Bat. It wasn't sabotage. Not yet. It was a mechanism, a quiet watcher designed to trigger during the next product demo. It wouldn't crash the system. It would simply reveal everything Martin had hidden. Live. In front of everyone. The script wasn't flashy. Just a few lines of code that pulled from the Ghost Mirror archive and redirected outputs to the public feed. No errors, no traces, just the truth. His truth. I remember sitting there, fingers hovering over the keyboard, realizing how strange it was to feel calm while planning the downfall of the man who destroyed you. Maybe that's what happens when pain runs out. It turns into precision. By the time the clock hit 2 a.m., I had everything in place. The launch meeting was scheduled for Friday morning, a public demonstration for investors, press, and potential partners. Martin would stand on that stage, smile his fake smile, and take credit for the successful recovery. And behind him, my system would run the presentation slides, which meant I'd control the screen. Perfect. Still, part of me, the old part, the naive one, hesitated. There's a line you cross when you decide to hurt someone deliberately, even if they deserve it. Once you step over it, you don't come back. I sat there, staring at the cursor, blinking on the screen, hearing the echo of Martin's voice. "Let's see how you fix this, genius," I whispered, almost to myself. "You'll see." Then I hit enter. The code deployed silently into the main system, disguised as a diagnostic update. No alarms, no changes, just a heartbeat pulsing beneath the data flow. Before leaving, I took one last walk through the office. Rows of empty desks, coffee mugs with fading logos, screensaver lights bouncing off the glass walls like ghosts. This place had taken 3 years of my life. I'd given it everything: time, sleep, health. Now I was taking something back. As I passed Martin's office, I stopped at the door. Through the glass, I could see his desk. Perfectly organized, expensive pen centered like a trophy. A photograph of him shaking hands with the CEO. The man looked like success incarnate. But I knew better now. Success is just control. And control is easy to fake until someone checks the wiring. I walked away before I could change my mind. At home, I didn't sleep. I sat in the dark, watching the clock tick toward morning. The city was quiet, neon reflections smearing the window. There's a strange peace in knowing you've already made your move, and all that's left is gravity. Tomorrow, when Martin stepped onto that stage, he'd be standing on a fault line. He just didn't know it would break beneath him. I glanced at my monitor one last time before shutting it down. The mirrored server showed its status in green. Stable. Active. The last line of the log read, "System integrity confirmed. I'm awaiting event trigger." So was I. There's a certain silence before a public event, that thick pressurized kind that settles on your chest before applause or disaster. That's how the office felt on launch day. The presentation hall was set up like a shrine to corporate confidence. Banners with the company's logo, a stage bathed in white light, a projector humming softly at the back. Rows of investors, reporters, and executives filled the seats, murmuring in that low rhythm of expensive cologne and quiet judgment. I sat near the tech booth, wearing the same plain shirt I'd worn for the last 3 weeks. Nobody looked twice. To them, I was just the guy running the system. Invisible. On stage, Martin Graves was electric. Tailored suit, flashing smile, every gesture rehearsed to perfection. The same man who'd thrown a binder at me 2 weeks ago now strutted like a king on coronation day. "Good morning, everyone," he began, voice smooth as oil. "What you're about to see represents resilience, innovation, and leadership, the spirit of this company. After a brief, hiccup in development, we've rebuilt the system stronger than ever. I couldn't be prouder of my team." My team? He didn't even glance in my direction. The irony wasn't lost on me. The same man who'd left me to drown now stood on a stage I'd wired, using slides I'd prepared, on servers I controlled. He thought he was holding the sword. He never noticed I'd built the handle. I checked the clock on my monitor. 10:03 a.m. The demo feed was live. My script, finalphase.bat, was sleeping quietly inside the system, disguised as a diagnostic task. It would activate the moment he clicked, "Run simulation." Martin smiled for the cameras. Let's begin." He clicked. The first few seconds went exactly as expected. Graphs appeared, Numbers climbed. The system performance indicators turned green. The audience nodded. He was in control. Then the shift began. The screen flickered once, twice. The background color drained to white. For a heartbeat, the room was still. Then the first line of text appeared across the giant monitor. Unauthorized transfer log. Account. M. Graves. A ripple of whispers broke through the crowd. Martin froze, his finger still hovering over the mouse. "Looks like a minor glitch," he said, forcing a laugh. "Give us a second." He tapped the keyboard, but the cursor didn't move. The text kept rolling. File accessed, payroll, manipulation, records.xlstex. Date, modified, March 18th, 11:23 p.m. User ID, M. Graves. The investors leaned forward. Phones started recording. Martin's smile cracked. "Please, someone from IT." His voice cut off as the next line filled the screen. Audio file, detected, private meeting, record, Pittery. The speakers came alive with his voice, crystal clear. "I'll pin this on Ethan. He's desperate to impress me. He'll take the fall." A collective inhale swept through the audience. Martin lunged toward the console, but the controls were locked. He turned toward me, the first time he'd looked at me in weeks. "Ethan, shut it down." I met his gaze. Calm. "I can't," I said quietly. "You told me to fix it." The screen exploded into cascading windows. Emails, bank statements, shell company contracts. Every secret he'd buried came flooding out like water through cracked concrete. The CEO's face turned pale. The investors whispered to each other, some standing, some already walking out. Reporters lifted their phones higher. Martin's voice went hoarse. "This is fake! This is sabotage!" But his voice was drowned out by the final display, a video clip, time-stamped, showing him signing forged documents. His own hand, his own pen. "This company runs because of me," he said in the clip, "and I decide who stays and who gets erased." The clip ended. The lights dimmed automatically as the system rebooted. The projector fell silent. You could hear only his breathing, sharp, shallow, panicked. I closed my laptop and stood. Martin stumbled off the stage, grabbing my arm hard enough to hurt. "You did this," he hissed, eyes bloodshot. I looked at him the way he used to look at me, with quiet pity. "I didn't do anything," I said. "You told me to fix it." Security arrived before he could say another word. The CEO walked past him, eyes cold, and said, "My office. Now." They led him away while reporters shouted questions. Cameras followed. I walked out through the side exit, unnoticed, the way ghosts leave burning houses. Outside, sunlight hit my face like the first breath after surfacing. I didn't smile. Not yet. Not until it was over. I just kept walking. Past the glass facade that reflected the company's name backward. For a moment, I thought about everything that had led here. Every night I'd stayed late. Every humiliation I'd swallowed. Every quiet moment I'd chosen not to fight. It was never about revenge. Not really. It was about balance. Back at my apartment, the news was already spreading. Corporate fraud exposed during live presentation. Tech executive faces criminal probe after leak. His empire was collapsing before lunch. I opened my laptop. The Ghost Mirror server's last log line read, "Data purge complete. Archive transferred." I'd already erased the trail, every trace of my script, every log entry that could link back to me. The system was clean, silent, like it had never existed. Martin wanted me to fix the project. I fixed everything. That night, I stood on my balcony, city lights flickering below, the air humming with faint traffic and distant sirens. I thought I'd feel joy, but what I felt was quieter, like exhaling after holding your breath too long. He'd built an empire out of fear. I'd dismantled it with truth. Same materials, different architect. Inside my pocket, my phone buzzed. An email notification. Subject line, termination notice, M. Graves. The message was short, just one line. Effective immediately. I closed it without smiling. Some endings don't need celebration, they just need silence. Still, as I turned off the light and watched the city through the window, I whispered almost unconsciously, "Let's see how you fix this, genius." The words tasted like peace. 3 days after the presentation, the building that once felt like a fortress of glass and noise was silent. Emails went unanswered. The company's Slack channels, usually flooded with messages, were empty. The only thing that broke the quiet was the sound of boxes sliding across the floor as people packed their desks. Martin Graves' office door stood open for the first time in 3 years. His nameplate was gone. Inside, the walls were bare, except for the faint outline where his framed awards used to hang. The man who once filled rooms with noise had been erased like a line of bad code. I didn't go in. I just passed by, coffee in hand, heading toward the exit. Nobody stopped me. Some nodded, some avoided my eyes. They all knew something had happened, but none of them dared to ask. That's the thing about power. People only speak when it's safe. By noon, I handed in my keycard. HR didn't even question it. They were too busy processing layoffs, firing managers, issuing statements. The company had lost its investors overnight. The board suspended operations pending investigation. The man who once said I was replaceable had taken the entire company down with him. Outside, the autumn wind hit cold and sharp. The street smelled like rain and burnt coffee. Across the road, a news van parked, a reporter rehearsing lines about a scandal that rocked the tech industry. I stopped at a small cafe nearby, the same one where I used to sit during my first week at the company, full of hope and caffeine. The barista, a girl with purple hair who never remembered my name, smiled faintly. "Rough day at work?" I laughed softly. "Something like that." I sat by the window watching people rush by, and for the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was running out of air. No meetings, no fake smiles, no one watching over my shoulder waiting for me to fail. It took me years to learn that peace isn't something you find. It's something you take back. The phone buzzed on the table. Unknown number. I let it ring once before answering. "Ethan Cole?" The voice was clipped, professional. "This is Detective Alvarez, Financial Crimes Unit. We'd like to ask you a few questions about Mr. Graves' operations." "I already sent everything I had," I said. Calm, measured. "We've reviewed the materials. The files you forwarded from your audit logs. They're detailed, but clean. Too clean. Did you delete anything else?" I paused. The reflection in the cafe window showed my face. Steady, unreadable. "No," I said. "Everything's in the report." "All right," she replied after a moment. "You might be called to testify." I almost smiled. "If you need me, you'll know where to find me." We hung up. I looked at my phone, at the folder marked Archive 0. Hidden, encrypted, untouchable, the one the detective would never see. That wasn't for them. That was for me. A record, a reminder. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the skyline, I drove out of the city. The highway stretched ahead, empty and golden. My apartment lease was ending. I hadn't renewed it. There was nothing left to stay for. Somewhere past the industrial district, I pulled over by the river. The waters shimmered like metal. For a long time, I just stood there, breathing. The anger was gone. The exhaustion, too. All that was left was stillness. Revenge stories always end with the same question. Was it worth it? I used to think the answer was no, that hurting someone, even justly, never brought peace. But that's the thing about justice disguised as vengeance. It doesn't burn you if you do it right. It purifies you. I didn't ruin him out of spite. I exposed him because he built his kingdom on other people's pain and thought he'd never pay for it. He just forgot that every system, no matter how powerful, has a back door. A week later, the headlines confirmed it. Former executive arrested amid corporate fraud probe. Whistleblower engineer credited for exposing internal corruption. My inbox flooded with messages. Journalists, former colleagues, even strangers thanking me for doing the right thing. They didn't understand. It wasn't righteousness, it was precision. Late that night, I received an email. No subject line, no sender, just text. You think you've won? You'll see. The message cut off abruptly. The rest was scrambled garbage. Someone had tried to send it from a restricted address, a prison relay. Martin. I stared at it for a long time, then typed 2 words in reply. Let's see, and hit send. Then I deleted the account permanently. A year later, I started my own company. Small team, clean structure, no egos, just engineers building something honest. Sometimes during late nights, I still catch myself thinking of that first office, the hum of the servers, the way Martin's voice echoed off glass walls, the binder hitting the floor. That sound used to haunt me. Now it reminds me that sometimes breaking things is how you rebuild right. A reporter once asked if I regretted how it ended. I told him the truth. He taught me how to survive in a system built on control. I just rewired it. He laughed like it was a joke. I didn't correct him. As I left the interview, I checked my phone. A new message had arrived from an unknown address, an image attachment. It was a photo of a whiteboard. 1 sentence written in shaky handwriting. Let's see how you fix this, genius. No sender, no metadata, just that. I stared at it for a second, then closed the phone and slid it into my pocket. Some ghosts never learn when to stay dead. The city lights blinked in the rearview mirror as I drove away. Calm, focused, alive. You broke me once, I whispered to the dark. Now I build myself from the pieces. And for the first time since it all began, I smiled.